The day I almost lost my family's land was the day I discovered I owned the entire valley. It began, of all ways, with a 6:59 a.m. sheriff call. I was sipping black coffee on the porch of my A-frame cabin, the mist still hanging low in the San Juan Valley, when flashing red and blue lights cut through the pines. The smoke from my wood stove curled into the cool Colorado air, meeting diesel exhaust in the most unnatural mix. That's when I saw her, Madison Clearwater. She stepped out of her pearl-white Land Cruiser like she was walking a fashion runway in Manhattan, not trudging up a muddy incline to harass a man over a cabin built before her entire development even existed. Her heels dug into the dirt road my grandfather had laid by hand in 1965. Madison was HOA president of Aspen Crest Estates, and by her own declaration, a visionary steward of valley excellence. I'd call her something else. Something shorter. She had no clue that I didn't just own my patch of land with the cabin and the beehives. I owned over 1,800 acres of mineral rights, water access, and, as I was about to learn, her entire economic future. But that morning, she thought she had me. The sheriff's department has received a complaint of an unpermitted structure, the deputy said, not unkindly. I'm obligated to take a look. Madison folded her arms, smug like a politician on election day. She probably thought she could bulldoze me with bureaucracy, like she had the elderly couple 2 lots over who mysteriously sold after 3 months of constant fines. She had no idea what she was stepping into. The deputy walked the perimeter of my cabin with me, stepping over neatly stacked firewood and admiring the craftsmanship. You do all this yourself? Grandfather started it. I finished it. He nodded, then flipped through a manila folder I handed him, original building permits, well logs, environmental assessments, deed history. All properly notarized, dated 1994, back when Madison was still probably telling people she wanted to be an astronaut. You're clean, he said. This isn't in her HOA, by the way. I smiled. Not even close. Madison's face curdled like milk in the sun. This building violates the view protection ordinances of Aspen Crest. The deputy frowned. Ma'am, his land isn't under your jurisdiction. That cabin lowers our property values. Again, not your jurisdiction. She stormed off in a cloud of perfume and gravel, but I knew this was only round one. That was when I pulled out the first of the binders Grandpa left me. There was a lot more than just cabin permits inside. The land. In 1964, Walter Boone, my grandfather, bought a forgotten swath of San Juan Valley land at a tax auction for $850. Locals said he was crazy. No road access, dense with scrub pine and deadfall, rattlesnakes the size of bootlaces. But Grandpa had a vision: water from the high springs, timber from the old-growth slope, and most importantly, rights. Water rights. Mineral rights. Timber rights. And something called future development restrictors, written in the barely legible legalese of the mid-century West. He lawed by hand. Dug wells. Cleared rock. Built a log cabin that stood straighter than any developer mansion I've ever seen. He raised bees for honey, taught locals how to harvest with respect, and mentored 2 generations of kids on land stewardship. I spent every summer of my childhood in that valley. Learned to whittle and weld, build and fix. When my parents died in a winter pileup on Route 145, I inherited everything: the land, the cabin, and the responsibility. I walked away from a 6-figure job in corporate analytics and came back to what I knew best. Solitude. Fresh air. A life worth living. For 3 years, no one bothered me. Then Aspen Crest Estates arrived. Suddenly, $1.2 million homes lined the lower ridgeline. They named roads after trees they cut down. They piped in lawn water from the creek they didn't even test. And Madison Clearwater arrived with her developer grin, her real estate license, and a vision for Phase 2 expansion. That vision included my land. The harassment begins. The first letter came on linen paper so smooth it made me laugh out loud. It read, per Section 4B of the Aspen Crest Standards of Excellence, your structure does not meet visual compliance. Daily fines will be assessed. $600 per day. I framed that letter. Then came the noise complaints. Structure violations. Anonymous reports of illegal greywater discharge. Fire marshal visits. Forestry concerns. Wildlife protection complaints. I kept a record of everything. Photos. Dates. Names. Times. Even the voice messages. Then came the environmental complaint from the state. Madison had filed it herself. She alleged my septic tank was leaking into Aspen Creek. I called Marcus, my college buddy turned environmental attorney. Get an inspector. A real one. Document everything, he said. I did. Bob, a septic pro with 30 years in the trade, took one look and whistled. I've seen million-dollar homes with systems worse than this, he said. This is textbook. Then Bob added something that made me blink. We just got another call last week. Big problem with surface runoff from the development up the hill. Chemical lawn treatment washing right into Aspen Creek. Guess who owns that? I didn't answer. I already knew. The moment Bob's words sank in, their runoff contaminating the very creek Madison accused me of polluting, I felt the first spark of righteous fury ignite in my gut. It wasn't just about defending my little A-frame anymore. It was about exposing a parasite disguised as progress. I spent that evening in my cabin, logs crackling in the wood stove, flipping through Grandpa's binders. His handwriting was faded but firm, his notes scribbled between legal descriptions and survey maps. He had prepared for battles like this. He knew that one day someone would try to pave over what he'd built. The smell of wood smoke mixed with pine needles as I read. My cabin, though simple, was a fortress of legality, every timber accounted for, every system built to code decades ago. Madison couldn't win on structure or zoning. That meant she'd escalate. And she did. The HOA Queen's second act. A glossy black business card showed up tucked under my windshield wiper. Clearwater Developments, President Madison Clearwater, Phase 2 Visionary. On the back, she'd scrawled, State Environmental Complaint filed. You're done. If this was her version of a declaration of war, I decided I'd respond with artillery fire. I called Marcus again. She's playing dirty, I said. Environmental complaint, harassment, bogus HOA letters. What's my first move? Marcus chuckled. Document. Then counterpunch. Bring in professionals to verify your systems. File your own complaints if you find violations. These HOA developers always have skeletons. He was right. Allies in the shadows. Within a week, I wasn't alone. Pete Lawson, a retired logger who'd lived downstream for 50 years, showed up on my porch with a thermos of coffee and a story. Madison had tried to buy his land at half value. When he refused, his property taxes mysteriously spiked. She's using friends at the county office, Pete growled. She wants to push us all out. Maria Torres, who owned the valley's only diner, told me Madison had reported her 4 health violations. 30 years running that diner, not a single complaint, until she moved in. Maria's dark eyes hardened as she poured my coffee. She's trying to buy me out. Wants to turn this place into a farm-to-table bistro for tourists. David Kim, a young software engineer from Denver, had purchased a lot in Aspen Crest, thinking he was getting a bargain. Turned out Madison overcharged him by nearly $40,000 through consultation fees. He'd been looking for someone who knew the valley's real history. Our little coalition formed over late-night pie at Maria's diner. Plans scribbled on napkins, legal codes highlighted, voices low but determined. The legal maze. Madison's next move was laughably transparent. She sent the fire marshal, claiming my wood stove was dangerously installed. Betty Gwynn, the fire marshal, stepped into my cabin like a drill sergeant. She inspected everything, copper pipes gleaming like polished pennies, safe clearances, certified heat shields. Her verdict? This is better than 90% of the fireplaces I inspect, she said. Mind if I use your setup as a training example? But Madison wasn't stopping. She filed a complaint with the Colorado Department of Natural Resources, accusing me of illegal timber harvesting. I don't cut live trees. I clear deadfall for firewood, like any responsible landowner. Tom Rodriguez, the DNR officer who drove 2 hours from Durango, shook his head. This is the 4th bogus call she's filed this month, he said. And you're well within your rights. Frankly, this is harassment. The discovery. The real turning point came late one night when I was combing through county records, trying to find any paperwork Madison might have filed against me. I was looking for ammunition. I found a bomb. Grandpa's 1964 deed didn't just give him the 1,800 acres. It included exclusive mineral rights under a 5,000-acre radius, covering nearly the entire Aspen Crest development. And, this was the kicker, it contained a watershed protection covenant that required my approval for any construction affecting local water sources. Madison's Phase 2 project, valued at $10 million, depended on the creek for irrigation and runoff management. Without my sign-off, her expansion was legally impossible. The smell of coffee went cold as I sat back in my chair, staring at that clause. Grandpa had been a genius. He'd foreseen the developers and their greed. I called Marcus immediately. Marcus, I said, I think I just found the nuclear option. The morning after I found the covenant clause, the valley felt different. The same scent of pine, the same early autumn chill, but now there was something else in the air, leverage. My grandfather had buried a legal nuke beneath this land 60 years ago, and Madison Clearwater was about to walk directly into the blast radius. I didn't rush to reveal what I'd found. No need. Let her keep digging. Instead, I spent the next 2 days organizing everything. I scanned deeds, photographed property boundaries, and printed every complaint she'd ever filed against me. The stack grew thicker than a phone book. I labeled folders: water, septic, fraud, harassment. And then I assembled my team. The dream team. Marcus, of course, was my first call. He was giddy when I told him about the covenant. You realize this gives you veto power, right? He said. If her development affects any water table or creek, you can shut it down. Already done the topography checks, I said. Every inch of Phase 2 runs straight through Aspen Creek's watershed. Then we hit her where it hurts, her financing. Next was Carla Donovan, an estate attorney from Grand Junction, recommended by Marcus. She specialized in quiet title actions and legacy land rights. You're in a rare legal position, she said during our first meeting. You're not just defending your land, you're defending a trust. Then I want to make it bulletproof, I told her. Let's make sure no one can touch this place for another 100 years. Finally, we brought in Carlos Mejia, Maria's nephew, a forensic accountant who'd once helped bust a state senator for campaign fraud. Within days, he started untangling Madison's web of lies. HOA dues used for personal legal fees. Duplicate mortgages. Conflicts of interest. Shell companies hiding real estate flips. She was bleeding money. Carlos looked up from his laptop one night in the diner and said, "She's not just unethical, she's insolvent. Her whole empire is held together by duct tape and threats." The paper trail. Meanwhile, Sarachan, my PI, kept digging. She pulled archived emails, fake social media accounts traced to Madison's IP address, and most damning of all, 2 prior lawsuits from other counties where she'd pulled this exact same playbook: pressure landowners, file bogus complaints, force a sell, then develop and profit. She's a serial abuser of HOA power, Sarah said. And now we can prove it. We printed everything. Every false 911 call. Every county complaint. Every inspection that turned up nothing. And we weren't the only ones documenting. Pete started logging visits from unmarked cars. Maria collected Yelp reviews left by fake users on the same day from the same IP range. David found his deed lacked disclosures Madison was legally required to provide, another violation. Madison, for all her polished public image, had created a paper trail of predatory behavior that stretched back a decade. We had all of it. The escalation. Predictably, Madison escalated. At night, strange things began happening. My solar panels were damaged, twice. Someone placed no trespassing signs along my road with false parcel numbers. My compost bins were tipped, their contents dumped into the creek. Oh, the irony. Even the bolts on my cabin's water pump were loosened, dangerously so. But I'd planned for this. My cabin now had 360-degree motion cameras with night vision and automatic backups. The next time our Land Cruiser crept down my driveway at 2:14 a.m., I got high-definition footage of the plates and an infrared snapshot of the driver. I handed it all to Marcus. "We're building a harassment case," he said. "This is more than zoning disputes now. It's criminal." The financial collapse. Madison had built her empire on two pillars, intimidation and leverage. We shattered both. Carlos uncovered a massive red flag in her 2019 construction loan. She'd used 3 lots in Aspen Crest as collateral, lots she didn't legally own outright, including one that still had my grandfather's mineral lien attached. And she was late on payments. Twice. Banks don't like developers with lawsuits, fraud allegations, and default notices. When we submitted evidence of the forged documents, the environmental violations, and the illegal harassment, her lender panicked. "We'll use this pressure," Marcus said. "She needs that Phase 2 approved or her entire house of cards collapses." I finally understood why she was so desperate. This wasn't about a cabin. It was about her survival. There's a strange calm that settles in right before a thunderstorm. You smell the static in the air. The clouds sit heavy. The trees stop rustling. Everything holds its breath. That's what the valley felt like the night before the HOA's annual meeting. I sat on my porch with a mug of honey-sweetened coffee, the stars overhead like scattered glass across a black table. The pines were silent. Even the usual all-calls had gone quiet. It was as if the land itself was waiting for something. Tomorrow, Madison Clearwater would walk into a room expecting applause and handshakes. Instead, she'd be facing a wall of residents armed with evidence, legal documents, and a rage long overdue. We were ready. Prepping for war. Over the previous week, we'd worked like a campaign team gearing up for battle. Maria reserved the town's community center for the meeting. Pete arranged backup power in case of a mysterious outage. Marcus filed a legal motion for injunction if Madison tried to bypass standard voting procedure. Carlos printed financial reports that looked like they belonged in a criminal trial. Sarah Chen, my PI, brought video compilations, time-stamped footage of vandalism, security camera shots of license plates, metadata from fake online complaints, and more. Even the sheriff's department was on notice. Deputy Vance, who'd grown up in the valley, assured us, "We'll have uniformed officers outside. If she causes a scene or tries to bar anyone, we'll step in." And just in case, I had a flash drive with every file backed up 6 ways. This wasn't paranoia. This was preparation. The meeting begins. The evening sun dipped behind the western ridgeline as I pulled into the parking lot of the community center. The lot was full, pickup trucks, hatchbacks, even a few Teslas. Madison's side had brought luxury SUVs, some with out-of-state plates. Inside, the temperature was 10 degrees hotter. Not from the thermostat, but from tension. About 150 residents crammed into folding chairs meant for maybe 100. The air buzzed. People whispered, clutched manila envelopes, stared at one another like soldiers in a trench before the whistle blew. Madison stood near the front, flanked by her high-priced lawyer in a tailored navy suit and a security guard who looked more confused than dangerous. She wore white. Of course she did. "I'd like to begin this meeting," she said, tapping a pen on her binder. Her voice cracked, just barely. "Tonight," she continued, We'll vote on Phase 2 of Aspen Crest, an opportunity for sustainable development, increased property values, and modern amenities. The projector flicked on. Glossy renderings of hillside homes filled the screen, balconies, infinity pools, golf carts. The kind of development that didn't belong anywhere near a mountain valley ecosystem. And as for the issue of the illegal structure near Parcel 13, Madison said with a smug look, "We're pursuing legal options for removal." She pointed to a photo of my cabin on the screen. That's when I stood up. The truth comes out. "Point of order," I said, voice calm. "You are not recognized," Madison snapped. "Actually," Deputy Vance called from the doorway, "he's a landowner. He speaks." Cheers broke out. Madison's jaw tightened, but she stepped back. I walked to the front of the room and plugged in my own flash drive. The screen changed. Grandpa's 1964 deed appeared in full detail, notarized, scanned, signed. Then came the mineral rights clause. The water protections. The veto power over any development that touched the watershed. Then I pulled out a 3-ring binder and opened it to the environmental analysis we'd commissioned. Full color maps. Elevation data. Hydrological flow. Phase 2's entire footprint sat squarely in the protected zone. I clicked to the next slide. Carlos stepped up beside me. "Let's talk numbers," he said. He showed her financials, Madison using HOA dues to pay for personal attorneys, overcharging lot buyers, defaulting on loans, forging notarizations. People gasped. Someone shouted, "What the hell?" Then came Marcus. "The quiet title action is active," he said. "Any attempt to develop Phase 2 without my client's approval constitutes fraud." And finally, Maria stepped forward. "She tried to shut my diner down," she said, voice trembling. "Spread lies about my kitchen. She wants us gone." Pete followed. "She offered me pennies for land my father cleared with his bare hands. When I said no, my taxes doubled." Then dated Kim. "She overcharged me by $40,000. Told me it was a scenic fee. I found out the land had mineral liens she never disclosed." The collapse. Madison turned to her lawyer, but even he looked like he was rethinking his hourly rate. Then came the final blow. A man in a gray suit at the back stood up. "Robert Miles," he said. "First Valley Bank. Ms. Clearwater, your construction loan is in default. Your collateral is no longer valid. And this gentleman," he gestured to me, "holds first lien on the underlying rights. You can't develop anything." Silence. Madison opened her mouth, probably to lie, but the words didn't come. Her face blanched. Deputy Vance stepped forward. "Ma'am, did you attempt to forge a notarized deed dated 1988 using a notary stamp from a woman who died in 1985? Gasps rippled. She said nothing. "Because we have that document," he added, "and it's been verified as fraudulent." The vote. Someone called for a vote. Phase 2 expansion, 124 against, 13 in favor. No confidence in Madison Clearwater as HOA president, unanimous. Support for land conservation protections, near unanimous. As she gathered her belongings, trembling and humiliated, I said quietly, "You threaten the wrong valley." She didn't respond. But she knew. Everyone knew. 1 week later, the image of Madison Clearwater being let out of her real estate office in handcuffs aired on the evening news. Her face was a mask of shock, rage, and desperation as 2 sheriff's deputies guided her down the courthouse steps. Behind her, a banner advertising Phase 2 luxury lots, coming 2025, flapped in the wind like a monument to her arrogance. The charges: document fraud, Class 5 felony. Embezzlement of HOA funds. Filing false complaints with regulatory agencies. Environmental violations. Her license was suspended the next day. Her companies entered receivership by Friday. Within a month, every lot she claimed to own was frozen under court order. But the legal battles were just the beginning. The real win. Carla filed the final paperwork for my quiet title action. It confirmed, beyond dispute, my ownership of 1,827 acres. All water rights across the Upper San Juan watershed. All mineral rights under 5 square miles. Veto authority over commercial development on environmentally sensitive parcels. Marcus took her down in civil court with a harassment lawsuit so airtight, even her own lawyer tried to negotiate a quiet settlement. We declined. The court awarded damages. Not just to me, but to Maria, Pete, David, and 4 other residents who Madison had systematically defrauded or targeted. The total judgment, $1.47 million. Her development dream was over. Community reborn. But something more powerful happened than just a legal win. We rebuilt the community she tried to destroy. Maria's diner became the de facto town hall. Pete's land, once under threat, was granted protected status under the new San Juan Valley Conservation Trust, a non-profit we formed using the fines and forfeitures from Madison's assets. Carlos volunteered as treasurer. David became the outreach director. Marcus handled the legal infrastructure. Sarah Chin donated her entire file to the Attorney General's office, which soon launched an investigation into 3 other counties where Madison had run similar scams. The scope of her corruption ran deeper than any of us imagined. She wasn't just a bully, she was part of a network of exploitative developers using HOA power as a weapon. And we'd exposed it. New traditions. The following fall, we hosted the first annual San Juan Valley Harvest Festival. Kids bobbed for apples next to the cabin Madison once called a visual blight. We roasted local venison, served Maria's honey cornbread, and handed out HOA survivor mugs as a joke. But the moment that stuck with me came later. Near sunset, I walked up to the overlook above the creek. The water shimmered with gold. The trees were beginning to blush with autumn. From the ridge, I could see the valley stretched wide, clean, wild, untouched. I pulled a folded piece of paper from my pocket. It was Grandpa's note, the one I'd found hidden in the deed binder weeks before. Faded yellow, written in his hand. To my grandson, never let them turn this valley into another parking lot. I smiled. They won't, Grandpa, I whispered. Not while I'm breathing. Statewide ripples. The case drew media attention. Ariel Kim's documentary Valley of Resistance won regional awards and was picked up by an independent distributor. It aired on PBS and was used in university land use courses. The Colorado State Legislature passed the Clearwater Act, mandating public HOA financial disclosures, conflict of interest requirements, protections for landowners outside HOA jurisdiction. 3 other HOA leaders in the state resigned within a month of the bill passing. I started receiving emails. From Wyoming. From Nevada. From West Texas. People asking, can you help us fight our HOA? People who had land. History. Legacy. But no voice. Now they had a playbook. Full circle. With her assets seized, Madison's foreclosed properties went to auction. I bought them. Not to resell. To protect. We added them to the conservation easement, locking away the threat for good. No phase 2. No hillside strip malls. Just pines, foxes, creeks, and air so clear it makes you forget what year it is. We started a scholarship fund for local students. Sent 2 kids to CSU last fall. One wants to study environmental law. Funny how the cycle completes itself. And as for me, I built a second cabin, smaller than the first, closer to the creek. I keep bees. I write. I teach carpentry to local kids in the summer. And every time I hear the wind rustle through the aspen, I remember, this isn't just my land. It's a promise. A place worth fighting for. Madison Clearwater once thought a few fake fines and threats could bulldoze a legacy. She learned too late, this land doesn't bend. And neither do the people who protect it.